يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي وروحي أحرفي ولساني.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. As we mentioned, this will be the last class before Qurbani. Inshallah, we'll resume sometime after Qurbani. So, whatever that wasn't any completed, inshallah, whatever questions you have with relation to Qurbani, you could use this time and ask for, inshallah. The last thing we did,
Last one always question was if people was in Apple and so if we have two people who was in the book because if Qurbani is not compulsory upon them. And go there.
That's a hard question over here. So as you mentioned, just go back to what? Go back to the principle, right? The reason why last class I mentioned, and we have to check it, is because when something mushtarak, something is shared, and the execution is one action. For example, two people own a slave. Let's say two people own a slave, right? 50-50, two people purchase a slave, 50-50, and one freed that slave, and the other didn't give permission. Alright? That person who owned 50% of the slave freed that slave, but the other who owned 50% didn't give permission. Right? According to the laws of the Sharia, that slave is free. Right? Why? Because itq and freedom is one, is not what? In parts. So what he would do, that slave would be free, and he would have to compensate the other person, right, for that 50% of it. With regards to Qurbani, even though it's 7 people taking share in that Qurbani, this dhabh and slaughter is 1. You don't do 7 slaughter. 1 for you, 1 for Zaid, 1 for Omar, 1 for Khalas, 1 slaughter, and that is it. Alright? So go back to the principle. The principle is that person upon whom Qurbani is what? Obligatory. Qurbani is obligatory, that obligation is upon his shoulders, it's not upon the animal. So if that animal were to die, then what? He would have to replace that animal, right? And inshallah we will build on that, right? A major defect enters upon that animal, he would have to replace that animal, alright? As a person upon whom Qurbani is not obligatory, and he purchases an animal with the intent of Qurbani, then his obligation is on the animal itself. His obligation is on the animal itself in the sense that what if that animal dies, he doesn't have to replace that animal. If that animal has a major defect, then what? It's allowed for him to slaughter that animal. Alright. Now, your question, right? Is the same question, or right? Your question now, okay, an animal, a bull for example, 7 people in that bull, right? 5 individuals, they are those upon whom Qurbani is obligatory, right? Qurbani is obligatory upon them, right? And just say, to make what? To make it easier, just say, okay, they don't have other shares, this is their Qurbani shares. It's not like, okay, they have what? Their shares, they're doing goat or sheep, or they're doing what? They wajib Qurbani in other animals, and this is nothing. No, say this is their what? Say this is their wajib, yani Qurbani, alright? And they have 2 people in that share, in that bull, that, Qurbani is not obligatory upon them. Now, that bull happens to die. You understand? The bull happens to die. So understand, if the bull happens to die, okay, you look at what? Who's liable, right? The liability then. Understand? That bull was owned by what? 7 people. You understand? The bull was owned by 7 people, so khalas. When that bull dies is what? The wealth of these 7 people, what? It gone. You understand? We can't say that, listen, you know what? Nobody's, and is nobody is responsible in the sense that, well, listen, 7 people come together and it's 5 and 2. The bull becomes stolen, the bull dies, then what? That is their wealth. In the sense that what? No one has to compensate anyone. Not the one upon whom Qurbani is obligatory has to compensate the other type. Except that now, with the principle we just mentioned, 5 out of what? The 7, they would have to what? Still see and do a Qurbani. Right? 5, because these 5 people, right? These 5 people, Qurbani is obligatory upon them. Right? That obligation upon their shoulders. Now the animal happens to die, they would have to what? Replace that. Right? Either they get what? Each of them get a separate share. Right, or each of them what purchase a goat. As for these, the 2 individuals upon whom Qurbani is not obligatory upon them, they don't have to what? Replace anything. Right? That is his question. Right? His question last week now said if that bull what? It wasn't stolen. The same scenario 5 and 2. Right? 5 and 2. Qurbani obligatory upon 5 and this is the obligatory shares. Right? And these 2 what? Qurbani not obligatory upon them but they still do Qurbani. A major defect enters the animal. Right? And they happen to what? And the bull was slaughtered, right? The bull was slaughtered. So the bull was slaughtered, understand the meat is halal and permissible, right? The meat is halal and permissible except what? It would not suffice for the Qurbani of these 5 people. You understand? So a person will say, okay, well, if that is the case, then okay, why a slaughter in the first place? Okay, you don't have to slaughter it, you shouldn't slaughter it. But what you do now, what you sell that animal, you replace the animal. So if you pay $14,000 for the animal, right, so just say you pay $14,000 for the animal, right, and each what? Each is what? If it's $14,000, each would have what? $2,000 any, this is the monetary value to the animal. Now a major defect enters the animal. Now the animal what? You sell it with just what? $7,000, right? So the simple $7,000. So what? These 5 people what? They what? 1,000 each is yours. These 2 people what? 1,000 each is yours. Whatever you sell it for, understand? Because it is equally owned by these individuals. You understand? You purchase, 2 people purchase a vehicle for what? $500,000. 2 people that equally own it, right? After 1 year, the price of the vehicle is what? $300,000, right? He owned $150,000, you own $150,000. After next 2 years, the vehicle now worth how much? $100,000. So your worth is what? 5 and his 5, 50-50. It's not like, but I pay him $250,000 for that. No, this is how you work it out. This is the worth, right? So if you want to sell that animal, whatever the value would be what? It would be what? How you call it? It would be divided amongst what? The 7. This is the monetary part. And these 5 people, these 5 individuals, they would have to what? They would still have to do Qurbani. Understand? They would still have to do Qurbani. Whether do what? Sheep, goat, or another share, right? But if it were to be slaughtered, then you go back to the principle. If it were to be slaughtered, yes, the slaughter is 1, and you have what? 2 categories of people. If it were to be slaughtered, it would suffice for what? These 2, right? And not these 5. Right? And not these 5. Them things don't happen. Ask things that just happen. It just happen. But understand, generally, listen, if I give you what? $5,000 and say, listen, take this $5,000 and what? Go and purchase an animal. So you go and purchase an animal, right? Or while going to purchase the animal, somebody what? Rob you and take that $5,000. Who responsible? Whose liability is that? That is my liability. I can't come, hey, pay back my $5,000, unless you really, deliberately, give somebody my money, right? You're not reliable. You're just an agent and a wakil. Right? Similarly in Qurbani, those who collect in shares, they are just wakil and agents, right? So if something happened to the animal, right, it's not like, hey, you have to what? Replace that animal, right? Is you what? You're not, that person not liable. You understand? You made him your agent, so your wakil is not liable, right? But as we mentioned, you don't work like that. You have to find the animal and replace it, right? Nobody wants to hear, hey, something happened to the animal, right? You have to replace it. Right, so we spoke about the defects in the animal, right? Qurbani shares, the distribution of the Qurbani meat. And this, understand the distribution of the Qurbani meat. We understand that the meat must be shared equal amongst the shareholders, right? It's not just the meat, understand? 7 people to a bowl, what it means? 7 people to each strand of the hair. Right? Every part of the animal is owned by 7 people. Right? This is how it is. And you have to go and distribute. So at least in the meat, it could be, a person could, it's possible to be distributed evenly. Right? As for the head and the foot and the tail and this and that, that also what? Each foot, even though we say, you take this foot, you take that foot, you take the tail, right? Each foot, 7 people own it. The head itself, what? 7 people own it, right? The liver, everything, 7 people own that, right? But now when it comes to distribute, right? You understand this, what you call a mutual any. If a mutual any agreement could be met, that is good, right? It's just like inheritance, as we mentioned. A person who had died leaving behind an estate, house, land, vehicle, cash at the bank. The house, and he has 3 what? 3 sons. The 3 sons own the house. The 3 sons own the vehicle. The 3 sons own every single what? 1/3 of every single asset. But time to distribute now, you could say, you know what? You keep the house, and I will take this, and I will take that. My claim to the house, I forgo my claim to the house, and I will just take this. Right? So amongst like the foot and the tail and this and that, if a person says, listen, the 7 mutually agree, listen, I will take a foot, but 2 we can share the head, I will take the tail, right? That good. Otherwise, if what? Everybody want what? The tail, then what? You cut up that tail, right? And you share it in 7 portion. Everybody want the what? The front foot, the front left one, right? Then what? Cut it up and what? And wait and share what? 7 equally. But we don't do that because people not like that. Alright? You know what? You keep that, you take this, and I got settled for that. So when he says settle for this, understand what he means? I got settled for this. He means that what? My claim, my 1/7 claim to that tail, I don't want it. My 1/7 claim to that, I don't want it. Alright? I will take this. So the others will mean, okay, our 1/7 claim to this, okay, we don't want it too. And like that, they distribute it. Things are okay, difficult, not so divisible, right? But the meat, as we mentioned, the meat, it should be what? It should be distributed equally. Understand? When we say distributed equally, each bowl has what? 7 shares, right? We hear many different things, right? Sometimes what? People do what? 3 bowls, right? Mix all the meat, and then what? Share it in 27 or 21 equal amount. No, you don't have 21 people in that bowl, right? And if your bowl is what? 700 pounds, and his bowl is 350 pounds, right? Khalas. The 7 people, what? They would get from this, right? This is your bowl. You cannot get from this to make up. You're not making up weight. It's not meat you're selling, right? It's not meat you're selling. This is your bowl, right? Whatever the weight it is, whatever the contents of that animal that belongs to you. This one, you have no share in this one. This is for these 7 shareholders, right? So it's not like, okay, mixing meat from one bowl and putting in the next one. Each bowl has what? Its shareholders, and whatever that bowl contains, it belongs to what? These 7 people only, right? And they don't have any what claim to any other portion of any other animal. And also, it's not like, okay, a person, when the old people would mention, just recently somebody mentioned, a person did Qurbani, right, 7 people, and one person just came and what? Cut off what? The sena meat, right? And I said, this is my one, right? He weighed and everything, okay, so this is the weight, just take out this weight from mine, right? It's not just about weight, right? It's not just about weight. A person that understand that whatever meat he cut out, right? 7 people own that, right? Yes, 1/7 is yours, and a thief the next what? 6/7, right? Nobody give you consent for that, all right? So a person not allowed to do that, right? The meat must be what? Shared what? Equally and appropriately also. Sometimes, okay, people feel it's just what? It's just the weight, you know what? So they're doing shares, 7 people doing what? Qurbani amongst themselves, and this man what? He packing all the 7 heap, right? And his heap had the best quality meat, but the weight is what? The same, right? No, that is not permissible. Right? A person can't take, okay, the best, and the cuts are all the meat, or the best cuts and what? Even though the weight is the same, and you put it for one person. No, that is not jais. So it must be shared what? Equally. Understand? And no way it is not possible that what? You get what? Equal 100%. That is not possible, because what? In your meat you have meat and bone, right? So even though you have a 50 pounds here, he has a 50 pounds over here. Here's what? Pure meat ratio may be what? A little more than the other. But you can't help that, right? So at least the best as possible that person try, right? That is why the ulama, they mention you should put pieces of what? Liver in it, all right? And tell you why. You know, many people, the concept of interest, right? The concept of interest, they believe interest to be, listen, you borrow $10,000 from a person, you have to pay back $10,000, right? If he charges what? If you say, listen, you have to give me $12,000, that $2,000 is interest. We understand that, right? 10,000 for 10,000, 2,000 is interest, right? But there are interest that comes in many other. This is one type of interest, right? This is only one type of interest. The illan and what causes interest? Qadar and jins. When the item is the same and that item is sold by what? Weight or volume, then there must be what? Equality. Any ziyada and extra and excess is also riba. For example, what? You have what? 100 pounds of potatoes. Potatoes are sold by what? Weight. You want to trade your 100 pounds of potatoes for what? Another type of potatoes. Irish potato for what? What potatoes do you have again? Well, there's a different item. Irish, and you have what kind of potatoes? Canadian potatoes, right? So you traded 100 pounds of what? Irish potatoes, right? You could only trade that for what? 100 pounds of Canadian potatoes. Why? The item is the same. Any ziyada is what? Interest and riba. You can't trade 100 pounds of what? Irish potatoes for what? 120 pounds of Canadian potatoes. That 20 pounds is interest. That is also interest. Ainur riba. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a Sahabi, he had what? One saw. A size of what? An instrument used to what? Measure, type of measurement, right? This is where we get sadaqatul fitr and fidya, half of a saw. He had what? One saw of what? Dates, good dates, right? And he sold that one saw of good dates for what? Two saw of lower quality dates. And he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he told him what he did. One saw of what? Good dates for two saw of what? Not so good quality dates. Nabi Aisam told him, Hada ainur riba. That is riba itself. That is what? Riba in essence. Right? Haram 100%. So then how, what is, that is why the kuffar, they would mention, Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَى. Bay, trade and commerces and ribas and interest is the same thing. And many people would say, but I don't see a difference. If I go through the bank or I go through this is the same thing, right? You have a $10,000, somebody borrowed $10,000 from you, you charge them what? A little interest, you charge them what? They tell them $12,000, right? So you make a $2,000. And next person, what he did, he took his $10,000, purchased an asset and sold it for what? $12,000. He made 2,000, he made 2,000, khalas, it's the same thing, right? And this is how they what? They viewed the same thing. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, no, the difference is what? أَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. This is what? Haram, and this is halal. Khalas, that's the difference. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, you should have what? You should have taken your what? One saw of what? Of good dates and sell it. That one transaction finished. Done. And that money now, right, take it and purchase two saw of what? Normal dates or whatever dates. These are two separate transactions and that is permissible, right? A person will say, well, but it's the same thing, right? But no. The two separate transactions made it what? Makes it what? A halal transaction. That one transaction where a person trade what one saw of what good dates for two saw of what a little inferior date, that is what the Prophet mentioned, Ainur riba. That is a riba itself, right? So here now, what that has to do with Qurbani, the meat. Understand, if the meat is equal, right? The meat should be equal, except as we mentioned, this is not guaranteed 100%. The meat over here is the item, right? So your 50 pounds, you will have 50 pounds of meat, and you will have some bone. You will have what? From your 50 pounds of meat, you might have what? 45 pounds, let's say, of what? Meat, and about 5 pounds of that is bone. His heap of 50 pounds, right, may have about what? 40 pounds of what? Meat, and about 10 pounds of the bone itself. So listen, you have what? 40 for 45. 40 to 45, that's what? You understand? It should be equal, 40 to 40. So what you do now, you offset it with something that is not considered to be meat, which is what? Liver. So the 40 here would be for what? The 40, and the extra 5 would be what? The liver would make up for that, right? So you can have what? 5 pounds of meat for 10 pounds of liver. It doesn't matter why, it's two different items, right? So it's a little technical, but there's many what laws of the Sharia were pertaining to these things, right? And many people some know, some don't know. But it's very important that we in all means, all how to exercise that equality, right? So we see over here, a person cannot say many times a person in Qurbani 7 people, I taking this, I taking that. What do you mean you're taking this, you're taking that? No, that belongs to 7 people. If they give you consent, yes, you can't just say you're taking it, you're thieving it, that's what you're doing, alright? Because it belongs to the 7 people. But I do all this work. If you want a wage, you could get a wage, right? I went and bring the bull myself. I went and slaughter the bull myself. I went and with that now you're entitled a wage, and the wage should be any part of the animal, right? The wage should be any part of the animal. Nabi Isa mentioned the ujra al-jazar, the wage of the animal should of the butcher should be should not be any part of the animal, right? And there's a maxima principle that says al-ma'ruf kal-mashrut, something that is known is something that is a person may not utter a statement, right, but he knows this is the norm. So if it's the norm, it's like something that was made conditional. For example, this butcher knows that, listen, every year I doing this man I doing this man sheep, right? And all the butchers charging $300 to do a sheep. But this butcher charging, he just take $100. Why? Because I just give him 20 pounds of meat. And he knows that's the norm. Every year he get 20 pounds of meat, so that is why he don't mind charging $100, right? So a person would say, listen, so I can't give the butcher some meat? Yes, you could give the butcher meat. Understand? You can give the butcher meat as a gift, a hadiyah, whatever, right? But it should not be in lieu of wages. So this same butcher, now tell this butcher, listen, this year you're coming, I'm giving you no meat, no foot, no head, nothing, right? So how much you going to charge me? You'll see if he charges the same $100. He won't charge you the same $100. He only charge you $100 because you giving him this and you giving him that. And this is from part of the animal, right? If it's that listen, no, I give you nothing from the animal and this is your wage, okay, no problem, right? But the point over here is the butcher, nothing from the animal should be given to the butcher's wages, right? In lieu of wages, all right? Continue with the distribution of meat. Understand, the Qurbani itself is the actual slaughter, and that is your Qurbani. Yes, the jurists, the fuqaha mentioned that it is mustahab and desirable that the meat, that a person's Qurbani meat be divided into 3 portions, right? 1 portion for himself, another portion for his relatives, family, another portion for the poor. This is mustahab, right? Otherwise a person can keep all for himself, or a person can give all, right? And if he gives more, he gives in He gives khalas. This is a separate reward. Understand, the Qurbani itself is a slaughter. You give in This individual, you get you get reward for what? Giving a hadiyah. You give it to your family, you get reward for what? You need maintaining family ties. You give it to the poor, you get reward for sadaqah. Right? So this is a different reward altogether. What you do with the meat. Otherwise, Qurbani is the mere slaughter. Right? So a person what? He gives all his meat to the poor, then he gets reward for what? Sadaqah and charity. In addition to Qurbani. But as we mentioned, a person what? Normally eats meat. Right? We mentioned this already. Right? This is the most Mubarak and blessed meat you could eat. Right? This is the most Mubarak and blessed meat a person can eat, a Qurbani meat. Alright? Understand all the Sunnah aspects that a person that we adhere to at the time of Qurbani. In slaughtering the animal, it is not restricted to Qurbani. This is how each and every animal should be slaughtered at all times. Right? It's not that a Qurbani animal now we treat it in this way and that way, and no. Every animal to be slaughtered should be what? This amount of care and this method should be adopted. Alright? For every animal, but we need to do it what? Qurbani time. Right? So if a person what understand, he recites his dua and this and that and whatever he slaughters the animal, right? And all the care given to that animal, this should be done throughout. So if a person he eats what? This type of meat, then what? This is Mubarak and blessed meat. Keep it for yourself. Keep some for yourself. Don't give all. Right? And this is where we cut this too. Right? All the meats are coming in from what? That Uruguay, Paraguay, this, that. Right? You must see how these animals are slaughtered. Right? Listen, Qurbani, how we take care of the animals. These animals that come in from these countries, how they are slaughtered. The animals are stunned. How the animal is stunned? A pistol is what? Shot in the head of the animal. You launch a pistol in the head of the animal, bolt in the head of the animal, and just before that animal dies, it is slaughtered. This is what khalas. This is what is done. Right? We're not going into that ruling, the ruling of stunning and halal and this and that. Khalas. You could take your own fatwa, whatever, right? But we're looking at how the animal is treated, right? Qurbani, how you treat the animal. You see anybody stunning the animal and hitting a bolt in the head of the animal? No, you see people bathing the animal, cleaning the animal, petting the animal, walking with the animal to the place of any slaughtering and how it is slaughtered and this and that, and the dua and this and khalas. That is Mubarak and blessed meat. You're not going to get anyway, no grocery shelf or no place you're going to get that type of meat. Right? So keep some for yourself. Right? Blessed meat. Right? And some people now, they now clean up the freezer and thing and they cook it, but this thing fresh and good as ever, boy. Blessed meat. Right? Are the parts of the animal that what? Unlawful to consume. Listen, when you stun an animal, right? You have what they call reversible stunning. This is normally used in smaller animals, like the chickens, right? Like the chickens, they would shock the animal, they would stun the animal, but this is what they call a controlled stunning, right? So the animal will be unconscious. This is where you can be able to slaughter it without the wings flapping and breaking up, right? These same animals, they take them off the belt, right? And after a while, they start to walk as normal, right? It's a regulated stunning, right? It's reversible. But the bigger animals are the bull, it's not reversible. After you put a bolt through the skull of that animal, you're gonna die anyhow, right? But before the animal dies completely, right? You're going to slaughter it. This is what? This is what is stunning, right? Stunning what these big animals. So the question here now, you have to tell yourself, you have to be sure that, listen, that animal didn't die because of the because of the bolt, that bolt through your head. Meaning what? You have to be certain now that animal after after it was that was shot in the head, it lived for a little time. That blow wasn't fatal. What was fatal? When you slaughtered, okay, this is when it died, right? But now you have to prove now, listen, it didn't die because of what? The stunning. It died because of my slaughtering. Alright? Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, when what? He went to partly fight between these two individuals. But wakazahu Musa. You think Musa wanted to kill the man? No. He didn't want to kill the man. Right? Khanaba one blow and what? That was fatal. Dead. You understand? So understand, we see an animal, normally listen, like people, we see people individual, different people what? The health conditions and this and that, it differs from individual to individual. So one bolt that animal get, okay, he might be able to withstand it, right? The next one, no doctor come and take no test to see if he can withstand a bolt, right? We don't know. But anyhow, that's a whole different topic by itself. Stunning. And all this thing about stunning is what? Mass production. Now we give what? Excuses. No, all of this is mass production to ensure that what? That person what? The money comes in. Otherwise you could pay people and you could sort it out, right? So anyhow, that is we have to be, particular what we eat, right? What we eat, even though what, yes, we look at price and this and that. You have a belt running, go and see how it operates, right? Bismillah, 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 right? That man what? He didn't say Bismillah, that Bismillah gone down, so we didn't say Bismillah in this one. Right? Listen, you have to what? You have to think for yourself, right? That belt, ask someone, that processing plant, how many chickens you do for what? The hour. How the slaughtering is. Bismillah, 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 right? Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah. A person. Anyhow, the parts of the animal is not is not allowed to consume, unlawful to consume. There are 7 parts of the animal that is what unlawful to consume, right? You know, in this time, many people they ask fatwa. They ask, where's the fatwa on this? Where's the fatwa on that? Right? The old time people they didn't know what is fatwa, right? But what they had taqwa, right? They had taqwa, and that was. And you know what is a fatwa? Fatwa is the borderline, right? After which is what? Fatwa, this is what the borderline. We shouldn't be on the borderline. We should adopt the approach of a taqwa. Long time you'd hear a person, I'm not eating chicken from this man, you know. Why? He don't come for Jumu'ah. He don't come for Jumu'ah. So what coming for Jumu'ah have to do with the chicken? Right? The chicken is still halal, but this is the amount of what? Taqwa, this is the amount of precaution he exercised. This man not coming for Jummah, so I don't trust that this man what? He would say Bismillah. Why he going to say Bismillah for? He fear Allah to say Bismillah? If he fear Allah to say Bismillah, then why not in the masjid? What prevented that person? Why would that person what? He could leave out Bismillah. No, he will make sure and say Bismillah. So why he making sure and saying Bismillah when he not even performing Salah? You know, so this was the taqwa the people long time. Now everybody wanted, was the fatwa, jais or not jais, right? So 7 parts of the animal that were unlawful to consume: the flowing blood, the male genital, the female genital, the testicles, and people will still be collecting this, right? The testicles, the bladder, the glands, and what? The bile, the gallbladder. These things are what? Not permissible to eat, to consume. Now the method of slaughtering. The other time I went out, I want to close off. I don't have a big meeting. 40? We make dua then. The method of what? Slaughtering. Right? The 4 vessels must be cut. The 4 vessels, the 4 vessels, which is what? The air passage, what? The trachea, the esophagus, the food passage, and the 2 jugular veins, right? So the air passage, food passage, and the 2 jugular veins must be what? Severed. It must be what? Cut. And after you cut that, there's no need to take the knife and stick it like this. Hey, leave it. Finish. Right? To take the knife and stick it till it reach the spine, that is makruh and dislike. Right? That is makruh and dislike. That doesn't what cause it to die faster, right? No. Once that is severed, right, that is sufficient. It is makruh to what? to stick the knife till it what? It reaches what? The spine of the animal. That is what? Makruh. The sunnah method of slaughtering. We have to skip plenty over here. Alright? The sunnah method of slaughtering, yes, the person who doing the udhiyah, the Qurbani is better for him to slaughter, except that if he doesn't know how to slaughter, then there is not a time to teach people how to slaughter. Alright? Come, let me show you how. Right? And two people holding and what? Cut out a man's tongue. Alright? No, if you can slaughter, slaughter. If you cannot slaughter, give somebody what? Who can slaughter. Right? You learn with a sheep or a goat, no problem, not a bull. You give somebody who can slaughter, and at least what you observe what is slaughtering. Observe the slaughtering. I could leave all that. Right, now, you know, some people ask, not ask, but you have normally what? The sunnah is what? The one who is slaughtering is the one who is reciting the dua. Right? Now you have people because what? The slaughterer is what? He versed in slaughtering, but he doesn't know the dua. Right? And the Mawli Sahib who know the dua, he don't know how to slaughter. Right? So here what? You slaughter and I say the dua. Alright? Understand? The ideal thing is the one who is slaughtered, this is the one who is what? That's the one who recite the dua. Right? That's the one who recite the dua because the dua is connected to what? The slaughtering itself. Right? But for the animal to be halal and permissible and the Qurbani to be valid, all that is necessary Bismillah or Bismillah Wallahu Akbar. Bas. Without the dua, yes, that is a sunnah aspect and it is better to be recited, right? But for the Qurbani to be valid, right, what would suffice is what? Bismillah or Bismillah Wallahu Akbar, and that would suffice. Now, you have two methods of what? Connecting the dua to the slaughtering. One is that the dua is recited first, and then you come down to what? Bismillah Wallahu Akbar in the slaughter. Right? So you mention the dua and you mention what? The names and then Bismillah Wallahu Akbar. Right? After Bismillah Wallahu Akbar is mentioned, there is nothing mentioned afterwards. Right? After Bismillah Wallahu Akbar, there is only slaughtering. A person cannot say Bismillah Wallahu Akbar, right? And what? All except from Zaid, Bakr, Umar, and then slaughter. That would not be permissible. Bismillah Allahu Akbar and you slaughter. Right? You mention your dua and mention the names and what? You slaughter. Right? Or the second method, which is a better method, because you have even the person reciting the dua, he don't know how, right? So the Imam had to come now. Inni wajhtu wajhi lillahi fatara as-samawati wal ardi, and the bull in the ground what? Everybody holding on what? 10 minutes. So the easier thing is what? Bismillah Wallahu Akbar and you slaughter, and then you recite the dua. Right? Oh Allah, accept from what? Fulan wa fulan wa fulan. Because what? Both of them came in the hadith. And this one what? This is also what? Permissible. And this what? For us, this better. Right? Because after you slaughter, at least you have time what? You can mention, oh Allah, accept from me fulan, fulan, fulan. Right? So both permissible. You don't know, a person have to say it in what? In the Arabic language, oh Allah, accept from what? Zaid, Bakr, Umar. He can mention that. Right? And you know how to go to get the father name and the grandfather name. Right? That's an individual. And even though the individual name is not called, the Qurbani would still be valid. Right? Because this is your intent, Qurbani. Right? But all these things, if it is mentioned, that is good. Alright? And also the person, as I mentioned, he must say what? Bismillah. The ruling is that if a person mistakenly or a person forgetfully omits Bismillah, a person Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, and do not eat that in which the name of Allah has not been mentioned. Do not eat that in which the name of Allah was not mentioned. So what about a person who slaughtered the animal, but he didn't say Bismillah, and the holy commotion, holy, wait, slaughter. And he didn't say Bismillah. Right? He forgot to say Bismillah. Right? So the rule is if a person omits Bismillah forgetfully, the animal would still be what? Halal and permissible, and the Qurbani is valid, right? But what that person what? Should not do. What are you opening your mouth for? Why are you going to tell a person, you know what? I forget to say Bismillah. Don't even mention that. Boy, that animal. You're going to deal with people who don't know this. That's not the time to teach people masail and laws, right? Similar in janazah time, people die and burial. There's no time to teach people laws of janazah and how to no khalas. Not in a setting like that. In a Qurbani setting too, not so you know what? You know the rule in Bismillah. A person omits Bismillah forgetfully, khalas, pass. You don't have to mention that. Why? Because a believer would never say, you know what, I'm not saying Bismillah. And I'm not saying that willfully. A believer wouldn't do that. A Muslim wouldn't do that, right? But what could happen, yes, mistakenly, forgetfully, he omits any Bismillah. It will still be halal, permissible, right? And we have about 10 slides again, but inshallah we'll stop over here. Anybody have any questions they can ask? Now. Understand, the dua itself is not a condition for the validity of the Qurbani. So that all these will be permissible, right? While the animal has been grounded, while the animal has been brought to the place of slaughtering, after slaughtering, right? There's what? Allowance and all of these things. Why? Because if it is left out totally, your Qurbani is not affected, right? Your Qurbani not affected, right? So you look for the easiest way, right? You don't want that, okay, 10 people hold on the bowl waiting for you to finish your dua and you're taking so long, right? I need to call everybody names, so right. That is difficulty on the animal, and more so difficulty on the people, right? So as I mentioned, yes, you could say that while the animal has been brought to the place of slaughtering, while the animal has been grounded, right, or after the animal is slaughtered, right, this could be mentioned. Now. Just we have one thing remaining over here, right? This is for the Qurbani, right? But normally what? You have, for Qurbani, is a time that, okay, you have people what? Profiting from what? Qurbani also. Nothing wrong with that once is that you need something permissible, right? Hajj people what? Whoever is a Hajj packet, the amount you actually have to pay is half the amount anyhow, right? But, Qurbani people what? Profit from what? Qurbani, but once hand, if it is done in a proper way, right? Yes, a butcher entitled to wages, a person entitled to what? His work entitled to what? Remuneration, compensation, nothing wrong with that, right? We're speaking about what? The animal itself, right? And we just mentioned two things and we'll finish, right? According to what the Sharia, a person cannot sell that which he does not own. You cannot sell something that you don't own, that's not in your possession. And secondly, you cannot profit from something that has not entered into your liability, right? How this connects to what? Bull or any animals for Qurbani, right? And every year we see it, right? But understand, listen, if you buy a bull for $10,000, right, you can sell it for $12,000, $13,000, $15,000. Khalas, you're buying and selling, nothing wrong with that, right? And it's up to the person how much if he wants to pay or doesn't want to pay. That is him, right? You're buying and selling vehicles, nothing wrong with that, right? But a person cannot profit from an animal without what? Without that liability coming on him. For example, listen. He goes and he sees a bull by a farmer, right? That bull is what? He makes arrangement 10,000. Until now, the bull remains with the farmer. He hasn't purchased that bull, but he go in one road now to sell a bull for $15,000 or $12,000, any amount, right? Say what? Because Monroe is by big bull, right? So he went one road now and what? This bull, I get in it what? He sells this bull for what? For $13,000, right? So the person purchases bull. So now he profits $3,000 from an item that hasn't entered his what? Ownership, his liability, right? That is what? That is an invalid contract, right? That is what? Null and void, and that is haram, right? Do you understand that liability must enter? He must what? That liability must come upon him. If that bull were to die, then what? Who would be responsible? Not the one who profited, the farmer. You understand? So until now, that bull hasn't entered his what? Possession, his liability, so he cannot what? Profit from that animal. You understand? Listen, if you go to the shop, and you what? You purchase what? The phone on the shelf over there, your item on the shelf, right? So you give the shopkeeper what? The $500, he make the receipt and he give it to you. And now he's going for the item on the shelf, right? The item now, when he's giving you the item, it falls and it breaks. Whose liability is that? But he bill in your name. This is what, $500. This is your name over here, your item, and everything is serial number written. Whose liability is that? The shopkeeper? Not so? Right? That is his loss. He can't say, but that's your item and that's your goods. No. Until now, that has not transferred to you. So it hasn't transferred to you even though you own it. Right? In this case with the bull, he didn't even own it. Right? In this case, what? You what? And this is the Shari'i ruling also. You own that, but the liability hasn't transferred yet to you. Right? So you're not responsible for that. Right? Now if he give it to you, right? And now everything give it to you now. Now you go to the store, you open the box and you check in and whatever and it fall on. Right? Whose liability is that? Whose loss is that? That is yours, not the shopkeeper. Why? Because it's what? The liability transferred to you. So a person cannot profit from something unless that liability transfers to him. Right? And this is what we see all about what? I know people, they probably don't know, right? But you cannot what? You cannot sell an animal that is not in your possession to begin with. And even though what? You pay for that animal, probably that is yours. That hasn't what? That liability has not transferred to you. Why? Because if that animal were to die, or get stolen, you know the farmer liable for that and not you. Why? Because it's not in your what? In your possession. Right? So these are things that are very important.
So if you pay the farmer for the animal, if you can arrangement that he will keep it by him until Qurbani, if you do have a place to keep it or something like that. Permissible?
Yeah, that is permissible, except what is still in his what? That is his liability. Right? He's doing you a favor. Alright? And it's still in what? Until it hasn't reached your possession, it's not transferred to what? The possession what? Or the liability has not transferred to you. And this is known if somebody steal the animal, right? The farmer when come and say, you know what, hey, I'm sorry, somebody stole the animal, you know, your money, that is it. No, he would know that he is still liable for that. Right? He is still liable. No, you take the animal, you bring it home by you. Somebody steal it by you. You can't call the farmer, hey, somebody come and take the animal, so what are you going to do? So that already transferred, he's not liable anymore, right? So these are things that are very important. They understand there's nothing wrong in what? Profiting from these things. One is what? Halal and permissible, right? But if it's what? It goes against what? The laws of the Sharia, then it becomes what? Impermissible, and that money, right? That those earnings, any haram, unlawful.
What about a guaranteed profit? Like
you had a that time. No, I say go ahead.
A guaranteed profit.
Right, that's good.
I know the Imam. I know you. I know you looking for work. At the end of the day, now you give me $15,000. I guarantee that sale by you. But I'm buying it for the farmer, keeping it. But still guaranteed by you.
Right, there are plenty of people what? Not know what a guaranteed sale, right? So long as what? It enters in your liability, even for a moment, right? Listen, I go on a city bull for what? $10,000, right? So the man what? I tell the man, listen, I'm going to sell you a bull for what? That was $15,000, right? When you come in, Tuesday morning. So I bring that bull Tuesday morning by me, right? It entered my ownership. Anything happened, it run away. There's my loss, right? I liable for it. So long as I have that liability, I could what? I could sell that. Guarantee sale. Right? The thing, just the point is what? That liability must transfer to you. Yeah?
About 2 hours.
You could buy something at
owe the farmer for about 2 hours.
You could owe the farmer for what? 2 months, 2 years, once it's agreed upon. So that's why it's simple, just like the dates, right?
Just take it in your possession.
Right. It must enter your possession. Right? Just like the dates. Listen, take your dates, sell it. Take the money and what? Buy the 2 what? So you're getting the same outcome but a halal way. Right? جزاكم الله خيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته
يا لغتي عربية حسبي قلبي وروحي أحرفي ولساني